Hi everyone, my name is Tony. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Sew Witchy Wear. On this channel, I sew witchy wares. What that actually means varies from video to video, but in general it means that I'm recreating costumes of pop culture witches. Sometimes I'll make my own designs or creations as well, it just depends on the month. This is the first video that I'm putting on my YouTube channel, and it was a learning process. Generally speaking, I intend on having a drafting portion of the video at the top of the video that will show you how I created the pattern that I used to then make the costume. This time around that didn't work out so well, primarily because I did not realize that my camera was not picking up the pencil I was using to draft. So if I were to try to show it to you, it would just look like me standing on top of a white sheet of paper for many, many minutes. So I promise the drafting portions will come in future videos, but for this video we're going to focus on making one piece for a Lilia Calderu costume. Now, if you don't know who Lilia Calderu is, that's fine. She's a Marvel character. She's most recently been featured in the Marvel television show Agatha All Along. She's a divination witch, and she's just really cool, and I was really, really into her costume, which I will, if I can figure out how, put here as a reference photo. And if I can't figure out how, I'll show it as a reference photo immediately after this. Like I said, this one's a work in progress. So anyway, so in this video I'm making just her jacket. I did actually also make the pants and the shirt that I wore for this outfit, but for the purposes of this video I'm just focusing on the jacket. This costume is not an exact recreation, and that's primarily because the materials that they used to make Lilia's jacket in the original show were pretty much all custom made. For example, they designed a tarot deck that was based on Lilia's life, and then they custom embroidered the images from that tarot deck into her jacket. Since I wasn't going to take the time to do that, if I'm being honest, I settled for alternative materials that I think get the vibe across, if not the exact recreation, right? So all that to say, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and let's jump in. All right, before we actually get started on the sewing portion of this video, it is of critical importance to me to introduce you to this sweet, sweet baby. Her name is Pepper, and she is my sewing room familiar. And she is constantly knocking things over and getting in the way. But my goodness, if she doesn't make the cutest little snuggle bug in her little bed. I love her very much, and she is going to appear in my videos at moments when I need a break, and also pretty much whenever she wants. Alright, so here is one of the aforementioned reference photos of Lilia. She is the witch standing in the front of this group wearing the absolutely incredible long jacket with the multicolored sleeves and the flipped over collar. Now, because I was not planning on making an exact replica of this jacket, I made some customizations. Primarily, I added a hood to it, and that is where we're going to start with the sewing process here in just a second. Let's get going. All right, so here we are with one of my hood pieces. Here I am working on the lining of the hood, which I made out of this incredible tarot material that I found, which is also what I used to make the flip over collar of the jacket itself. So as you can see, what I'm doing here is just marking in my tiny little darts that exist in this hood pattern and pinning them so that I can go in and sew those darts closed. Um, this is a lengthy process to pin these tiny little darts, and I'm doing it on both of the side pieces of the lining of the hood as well as the main material of the hood, which is a really lovely silky gold color that you'll see in just a second. We're just going to kind of speed through this, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, and now I've got the hood pieces over at my sewing machine, which is a 1957, I believe, Singer 99K. I love this machine, and while, yes, aesthetically it is beautiful, it is also just such a functional and reliable machine, and I don't think I'll ever go back to using a more modern one. I do have a more modern serger that I will use primarily to keep edges from fraying. I don't really work with knit fabrics terribly often, but I love, love, love this absolute workhorse of a sewing machine, even if it only has one type of stitch, a straight stitch. So as you can see here, I'm just sewing all of those darts that I marked in the previous section, sewing all those darts shut, and then I will iron them. I do that off camera and come back to sew the rest of the hood together. All right, so now I am sewing the back seam of the two hood pieces. So the hood lining and the hood outer are made from two separate pieces of fabric that are then seamed together down the center once I have put the darts into them. So I'm sewing the lining obviously here, and now I am sewing the back seam of the outer fabric. And then once those are both assembled, I will slap them together and then I will sew around the outer edge. So we'll do that in just a second. So here we are back at my drafting table, and I am pinning the lining of the hood and the outer section of the hood together the whole way around the front. So if you can imagine, this is where the hood is going to go around either side of your head. And I'm pinning these two sections together and I will essentially bag line them and then flip them inside out. And then the hood will be done for the time being. The next thing I would do with it, it would be to bring it to the jacket itself once that's constructed and squish it in between the lining and the outer, but that'll be closer to the end of the video. And we're back at the sewing machine, just sewing around the outer edge, as I just mentioned. Now, you can really tell in this clip that I was starting to realize just how much of a pain that silky gold fabric was going to be. It really wanted to bunch up on me as I was sewing. I really had to keep a good hand on it. Later on in the video, you'll see that I started pinning a lot more. I started putting my pins about 3/4 of an inch to an inch apart instead of being a couple inches apart like I would do with a sturdier fabric. This was a pain the whole way through the process, but the material is gorgeous and so soft, and so I think it ultimately was worth it. So here I'm just flipping the hood inside out so you can kind of get a sense of what it looks like. At this point, I just needed a pepper break, so I stopped and I pet my little baby and got some little hand licks from her because she's so cute and she just wants to take care of everyone, including me, when she's not menacing everyone, mostly me. So say hi to Pepper, everybody, and we'll be back to sewing in just a moment. All right, back to the sewing table. So here I am pinning the sleeve together. So the sleeve is color blocked, and in this spot I am pinning this blue, like sturdier blue cotton fabric to the gold fabric and starting to color block the sleeves out. And here, some magic happens, because it turns out I forgot to film any more of the sleeve making process. So just rest assured that I color blocked out two different sleeves, and then I made some linings for those sleeves out of a red flannel. That's what's happening right now at this moment. And now we are back to parts of the process that I actually remembered to film. So in this spot, I am situating the actual outer portions of the jacket. So um, I patterned the jacket in sort of princess seams. They're not like a very intense princess seam, but they are technically, I suppose, a princess seam. And so here I am pinning together the side pieces of the front of the garment. And again, this is the outer fabric. I lined it with a red flannel fabric that is very cozy and snuggly. As I mentioned before, this is also the part of the process where I realized just how many more pins I needed to be using than I normally do. And so as I pinned down the front of this, I was pinning no more than one pin every inch, just to keep the fabric from slipping and sliding all over the place on me when I went to the machine and sewed the pieces together. And here I'm doing the exact same process with the lining fabric, which is the red flannel and also this beautiful taro fabric that ends up flipping out to be the collar of the jacket in the end. So again, this is the exact same thing I did in the previous step, pinned all the way down the princess seam on the front on both sides. You can also see here that I serged the raw edges of that taro fabric, just because it really wanted to fray on me. This whole piece is going to be bag lined at the end of the day, so I didn't bother finishing the edges of most of the pieces of fabric, but I was worried that that taro fabric was going to just disintegrate while I was trying to sew it if I didn't finish the edges. So it's the only fabric of all the materials I used for this that I did ultimately end up deciding to serge the edges of just for stability's sake. Insert more magic here as I sew all the pieces that you just saw me pinning together to create the front, outer, and inner portions of the jacket. And here in just a second, we'll be back at the cutting table as I assemble the back. So here we've got the back of the jacket, and I'm pinning the top shoulder seams of the front piece to the top shoulder seams of the back piece, so that the jacket will be sewn along the shoulder seams of both the lining and the outer. I will then attach the sleeves to these long pieces that I have connected. And if what I just said doesn't make any sense to you, no worries, I'm going to show you what I mean here in just a second. All right, so here we are. This is the outer section of the jacket. The front and the back pieces are connected at the shoulder seam. I'm then taking the sleeve piece, centering it on that shoulder seam, and pinning down the sides where the sleeve connects to the jacket. I will then sew the whole way down across that to connect the sleeve to the jacket. Obviously, I did this on both sides of both the outer shell and the lining so that I had a full outer shell with the sleeves attached and a full lining with the sleeves attached. At this point, I have flipped the jacket so that the right sides are together, and I am going to sew, well, first I'm going to pin the underside of the sleeve together, and then I'm going to go around that 90-degree angle at the underarm, and I'm going to pin all the way down the side of the jacket. So I am sewing the under seam of the sleeve and the side seam of the jacket all in one shot straight down, so it'll all be connected into a single piece at last. And again, I will do this to both sides of the jacket, outer shell and lining. All right, once I've sewn up all those seams, it is time to attach the hood to the outer shell of the jacket. I am going to pin this across and then I'm going to sew it down just with a basting stitch. I'm just trying to get this hood attached to the outer shell, so that I can then bag line the outer shell and the lining and catch the hood in between the two. And with that, we are basically at the last and by far most finicky step of this entire process, and that is bag lining this giant jacket all together with all of its different types of materials, all of which interact with each other differently, and trying to keep everything in line and in place. And let me tell you, this probably took the longest of the entire process. So I started by just lining up the shoulder seams and sewing all the way across the top. And then I came back and pinned the sides together and pinned the bottom together and sort of did it all in a variety of steps. So here I'm still just lining up the top and snipping off a couple of spots that didn't quite line up correctly. And then I sewed it together, and now we are back to lining up the sides of the jacket and pinning those together and then sewing them all the way down. So yep, now just pinning down the other side seam of this jacket. And then once that is pinned, I flip to the bottom and start pinning it across. Portions of the bottom don't line up particularly well. I'm not entirely sure how that happened. I'm guessing it was because the slippy, silky outer fabric was difficult to cut in addition to being difficult to sew. I left a hole in the middle of the back of this jacket so that I could ultimately flip the whole thing inside out. And that is what I'm about to do right here. I am cutting my corners of my bag lining so that I can poke those through in a moment. Also, I'm cutting off this bottom of the jacket that didn't line up particularly well. And then I will reach in through the hole that I left in the bottom of the jacket, and I will flip the whole thing inside out through the bottom. Then once I am getting it flipped inside out, I will reach back in, I will poke all of my corners out, I will find the outer or the inner lining of the sleeve and I will poke it through so that it matches up with the outer section or the outer cover of the sleeves. And then I'll go back in and I will close up the hole that I left across the bottom of the jacket and I will close up the open seams across the bottom of the cuffs. And then we will go to our finished product. All right, so that brings us to our final thoughts. Overall, I am actually pretty happy with how this project came together. I really love the pants, which I know I did not show you how I made in this video, but they came out great and I have been wearing them to work all the time. The jacket I think is fantastic, and while I don't know if you would realize if you saw me at Comic-Con that I was Lilia Calderu, I still think that I captured the vibe of her character, and I'm really proud of how it all came together. That said, I'm definitely less proud of how this video came together. Obviously, there were some pieces missing, some steps that I forgot to film, and overall, I've learned a lot about, I think, how to construct these videos, and I really hope that they will get better as we keep going. So, again, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to my channel. I really hope you'll stick with me as I start my adventure sewing witchy wares for you all. Have a great day.